A Year of Grace, Part 3. Then the sheep were sheared, and the selling of the wool cheered them all, for wool was worth 25 cents a pound, and the sheep averaged 10 pounds of wool apiece. Each sheep had paid for itself and 50 cents more with its wool alone. By the last of May, the lambs had all arrived, and there were so many twins that the flock was more than doubled. Lambing time was a busy time, both day and night, for the sheep must be watched and the lambs cared for. Among the 100 sheep, there were only 5 ewes who could not or would not care for their lambs. These 5 lambs were brought into the house and warmed and fed milk from a bottle and raised by hand. Rose spent her time playing in the yard now. Laura tried to watch her as the little pink sunbonnet went busily bobbing here and there. Once Laura was just in time to see Rose struggle upright in the tub of water that had stood under the pump spout, with the water running down her face and from her spread fingers at each side. Rose said without a whimper, "I want to go to bed." One afternoon, just after Rose had been washed and combed and dressed in fresh, clean clothes, Laura heard her shrieking with laughter, and going to the door, she saw her running from the barn. "Ooh!" Rose called. "Barnum did just like this." And down she dropped in the dusty path, with her arms and legs waving, rolled over and over on the ground. She was such a comical sight that Laura could only laugh too, in spite of the wreck of the clean dress, the dirt on her face and hands, and the dust in her hair. Another time Laura missed her from the yard, and with fear in her heart ran to the barn door. Barnum was laying down in his stall, and Rose sat on his side, kicking her heels against his stomach. Carefully, as not to disturb his body, the horse raised his head and looked at Laura, and she was positive Barnum winked one eye. After that, Laura tried to watch Rose closer, but she couldn't bear to keep her in the house with the spring so fresh and gay outside. The work must be done between moments of looking at Rose through the door and window. Once again, she was just in time to see Rose miss an accident by a narrow margin. She had evidently gone farther afield than usual and was just coming back around the corner of the barn. Then Kelpie, Trixie's latest colt, came running around the same corner with another colt chasing her. Kelpie saw Rose too late to turn, too late to stop, so she put an extra spring in her muscles and sailed over Rose's head, while Susan, the other colt, proving, as she always tried to, that she could do anything Kelpie did, followed behind, going neatly over Rose's head. Then Laura was there, and snatching Rose up, carried her to the house. Rose had not been frightened, but Laura was, and she felt rather sick. How could she ever keep up the daily work and still go through what was ahead? There was so much to be done, and only herself to do it. She hated the farm and the stock and the smelly lambs, the cooking of food and the dirty dishes. Oh, she hated it all, and especially the debts that must be paid whether she could work or not. But Rose hadn't been hurt, and now she was wanting a bottle to feed one of the pet lambs. Laura would do the same. She'd be darned if she'd go down and stay down or howl about it. What was it someone had said in that story she read the other day? The wheels go round, and the fly on top will be the fly on bottom after a while. Well, she didn't care what became of the top fly, but she did wish the bottom one would crawl up a little way. She was tired of waiting for the wheel to turn. And the farmers were the ones at the bottom. She didn't care what Manly said. If the weather wasn't right, they had nothing. But whether they had anything or not, they must find it somehow to pay interest and taxes and a profit to the businessmen in town on everything they bought. And they must buy to live. There was that note the bank Manly had to give to get money to buy the grain for the reseeding after the windstorm. He was paying 3% a month on that note. That was where the wool money would have to go. No one could pay such interest as that. But there was all the summer's living before another harvest. Her head spun when she tried to figure it out. Would there be enough money to pay it? Their share of the wool money was only $125. And how much was that note? A bushel to the acre of seed, wheat, and a $1 bushel for seed, $100. 60 acres of oats and 2 bushels to the acre of seed, 120 bushels at 42 cents a bushel, that would be $50.40. Added to the $100 for wheat, the note must be for $150.40. It seemed to make a great difference in the price whether they were selling wheat or buying it. To be sure, Manley said, there were freight charges out and back and the elevator charges, but it didn't seem fair even so. Anyway, they should pay the note at the bank as soon as possible. If they had to do so, they could buy a book of coupons at the grocery store and give a note for that at only 2% a month. It was rather nice that the merchants had got those books with coupons from 25 cents to $5 in the $25 or $50 books. It was convenient and it was cheaper interest. They had not bought any yet, and she had hoped they would not have to. Somehow, the thought of it hurt her pride worse than a note at the bank. But pride must not stand in the way of a saving of 1%. She wouldn't think about it anymore. Manley would do as he thought best about it. It was his business, and he wasn't worrying.